Hello and welcome back to the channel. I just wanted to make a video about a situation that's arose following one of the music community members who passed away earlier this year. It was really sad and real shock to everybody. Anyway, I was asked to write a track for a compilation and I said absolutely, definitely. We had a discussion about the money and stuff like that, and I said, well, to be honest, it would be better if it was just a free album for everybody just to remember him, and I don't want any money off this. That's not what it's about. So I actually put it out there and said, it should be free, it shouldn't be charged or anything like that. So I'm happy to donate a track for this album, which I did. So anyway, I got told I was told I had a limited deadline. Now I had a holiday coming up, and so I had 2 weeks time frame to do this. Anyway, I got it done, finished the track before the holiday. Anyway, went off to Egypt, had a really good time, came back, and the album's still not out. 2 weeks, and I thought this had a deadline. So anyway, there was a Google Drive, and I downloaded the tracks that were up there from Google Drive. And I noticed that most of them were either not mastered or EQ'd, or what they'd done is some of the artists had put a bit of EQ on, brickwalled it, and then passed that off as a master. So it's not a dig. It's not a dig at all. It's just this happens. This is just the community. So what usually the mastering engineer would usually go out and say back to the artists, can you take all of the stuff off the master bus? Which is reasonable sort of thing to ask. I offered to do a master for one of my friends. I offered to master one of these tracks for my friends, and I said, because I listened to it and I thought, that's a really good track. I really like this track. I thought I can really make this track sound amazing, because that's what mastering is. So obviously I've come back to him and I said, look, I'm a mastering engineer. If you'd like me to sort of have a go and see what I can do with it and see if I can make it sound better, he agreed to it. He's like, oh, absolutely delighted, and well, rightly so. Someone's going to make his do mastering, it was never mastered. I mean, he said that. He said, I'm not a mastering guy. This is your sort of bag, Anyway, so I did the master, and then the word got out that I'd mastered one of the tracks, and another artist asked if I would do theirs. So before long, I decided to offer to master the whole album, since it was to pay tribute for a friend. I thought, this is all about benevolence. The guy was selfless. The guy would do anything for anybody. He had a website. He interviewed people to try and promote new artists and everything. I'm a benevolent person anyway. That's just naturally, which is why I offered it. I said, yeah, no problem. I said, look, I've got a bit of time spare. I did have a couple of masters come in the process of doing it, and obviously paying customers get priority, absolutely, always, so this was like a little sideline. I was sort of doing it in between, but I was working sort of longer hours. I was doing working through the evening and stuff like that, and sometimes sort of doing a bit of stuff at weekends and stuff, which I don't usually do, but I got on with it, and I thought, no, this is for a friend. I'm passionate about this now. This is something that I really want to give as much as I can to. So I did the mastering, and I said, well, I'm happy to do the mastering on the condition, since I'm not getting paid for it, I'm happy to do the mastering as long as I'm credited for the masters. I mean, obviously, all the mastering engineers, we need work at the moment. It's one of those things. There's been peaks and troughs, and at the moment we're in a trough. There's all this AI stuff coming out, and people think that that's better, and it's not. It really isn't. But people just go, oh, click a button and it's done. It's nothing compared to a hand master, absolutely. And I mean, I could go into a lot of details about it. It's not for this video. Anyway, so I just agreed that I would do this on the condition that I was credited for the work. And he come back and he says, yeah, that's fine, but there's 2 tracks that I don't want you to touch. He said, they've been mastered and I'd rather you didn't touch them. So I said, all right, that's fine. So I put one of the tracks on just because I'd downloaded the whole lot. So I just put the analysis software on, and I thought, well, it's EQ balanced. It's got a good LUFS level. It didn't have the mid-side cut-off, which would stop all the phasing issues in the club or anything like that. But it was, and I thought, right, okay, that's fine. And then as I was going through them, I was analysing them. One of the other tracks I'd analysed was also, I could see that it was mastered. It was professionally mastered because all of the jobs had been done. Everything was exactly how I would do a master, and it was very well done. And I said, well, I'm not going to touch that because that is obviously already mastered. I can see that. You can. A master engineer can see the difference between a mix and a master. Anyway, so as these were all sort of similar sort of LUF levels, there were similar sort of dynamics. The ones that had been uploaded were similar. I thought, right, well, I'll use that LUFS level on those masters as a benchmark so everything can be uniform. So, when you're doing a compilation, you really need to do it so everything fits in the same. You haven't got one track goes, bah! And another track that you're like, what? You're turning it up, and then that really loud track comes on after, and you're like, everything's up and down. Anyway, so really, you just want them uniform. So I use that as a benchmark. Everything all fitted in perfectly. Really nice sort of compilation. It was sounding sweet, but there was a couple of tracks. There were a couple of tracks. There was one initially that I don't know if you'd put a distortion effect on the master bus or something like that, but it pulled everything into the centre. So there was no stereo information to work with for, enhancing the width. So I couldn't do any of that. So I went back to him and I said, could you take whatever's on the master bus, could you just remove it and send it in to me? And he come back and he actually sent a different track. So I said, all right, that's fine. So I mastered that, and it was fine. I didn't have any problems with it, nothing out of the ordinary. Anyway, so I did the master. There was another track, and it had been absolutely smashed with a brick wall limiter. I mean, you could hear it had been EQ'd. You could see it had been EQ'd. It sounded okay, but it was way too loud. So in order for me to bring it in to the level of the compilation, so everything's all sitting the same, I'm having to pull that down. Now, obviously, when you've brick wall limited something, when you pull it down, you've still got this total flat top and bottom. So there's no dynamics. So I then had the job of trying to pull back in the dynamics before I could even start mastering it, because basically I'd gone back to the label. I didn't know who the person was anyway, so I'd gone back to the label and I said, look, can you ask him to take all the stuff off the master bus? It's a standard thing. Oh, he's not touching that. He refuses it. He's said to me that he's going to quit music soon, and stuff like this. And right, okay, so a delicate situation. I thought, right, okay, so I've just got to work with what I've got because it needs to be mastered for the compilation. So I've now got the job of pulling in all these dynamics back into the mix before I can even start doing any mastering. So I've managed it. I've managed it. There's certain bits of software you can use. There is certain ways, little tricks you can do. I'm sure a lot of mastering engineers know that anyway. There is a lot of stuff you can do to actually do this, and I've done it. So I've then mastered it and got the stereo width and pulled off all of the mid-side below a certain frequency so it's matched to the rest of the album. You have to do this. This is one of those things. You've always done it for vinyl because otherwise the needle will jump out. But more importantly, in a club, you can get phasing issues between the speakers if you haven't monoed all of the stuff at the low end, particularly if it with dance music. Anyway, so it's essential to do that with anything. But a lot of the stuff that I see mastered, they haven't done that. It's just like, well, you've missed a pretty important step there. But anyway, there's a lot to mastering that people don't think happens. They just think, I'll just chuck a loudness thing, EQ and a loudness limiter. No, that's not how it works. Anyway, so this artist, I'm going to refer to him as Mr. Brickwall because I think that's pretty appropriate. Refused to take all the plugins off the master bus, so I couldn't do anything. So I've done the job. Finally got the album done, sent it in, only to find out there was a load more. Oh, we're still waiting for this and we're still waiting for that. Well, I thought that was it. I thought we'd already had a deadline. We're now talking we're a couple of months in on this. Now I had a deadline of 2 weeks to write the track, and then I had this. I said, right, I'll get the master done. I'll try and get it all done this week. I got that thing done just over a week, which is really quick considering I had other jobs coming in as well. Yeah, so I got it done, and it got released, and I thought, well, okay. So I went on there, and I looked at it, and I thought, well, hang on a minute. This has not been credited. Track number this, track number that, track number that have been credited to all these different people. Now, there was only 3 tracks. There was the 2 that I was told to leave alone, and the other one, which I could see was already mastered. And I said, well, I'm not touching that because obviously it's been mastered. So I'm not taking the credit for someone else's work, obviously. And I'm not going to touch the others because I've been asked not to. And I noticed the credits. I thought, that's a lot of credits. Is there more tracks on it that I don't know about? So I went back and I matched up the track numbers, and I thought, hang on a minute. That's one that I mastered. And so is that. And so is that. So I checked all the downloaded files, and I could clearly see all the tracks that I had mastered. And this one that had been, 3 of them that had been credited to other people. I think one was a mistake because one was a DJ mix that was at the end, and I think they numbered that to one that I had mastered. But that's a clear mistake. Well, they're all mistakes really, because I'd mastered them all the ones that were listed. But so anyway, so I went back to him and I said, I think you've made a mistake here. There's several of the tracks have been credited to other people, and I made a list and said these tracks here are ones that I mastered, and I could see that, and I could, when I listened to him, I could hear, all of the stuff. I mean, when you master an engineer, you know what you've mastered, you know how you do masters, and not only that, there's other empirical evidence for mastering. There's the spectral analysis, there's the LUFS levels, the mid-side EQ, and also I always insert an ancillary moment which is not ever present on the original, and I'm not going to say too much about that. It's my little digital ID for when I do masters. So anyway, so these are all present in the mastering. The label owner had told me that Mr. Brick Wall here had sent a new mastered version in that morning, and I was like, hello, well, he's suddenly gone from this Brick Wall Limited EQ'd and Brick Wall Limited master to this professionally mastered mix, and I'm like, that's mine. That's my and I could see it, and I looked on the waveform and I could see it, and so I bought up the one of the plugins for analysis, and I could see where all the mid-side EQ was done, and I could see how I'd leveled the EQ, and just I always put very slight dip. I never push it totally flat. I always give it a little bit. I just get a bit of warmth and a bit of sort of sparkle. But anyway, that's my style of mastering. I mean, anyway, and I thought, well, hang on a minute. You're telling me that he sent in a new master, it's identical to the mastering that I've done. Now, I've been in the music industry for over 30 years. I spent 4 years doing a degree in this. So, there's a certain level of, I'm not trying to pull my own buttons or anything like that, but when you've been doing it that long, you know what sort of, where people can go from one stage to all of a sudden, like, wow. And I thought, well, that's funny, because this is the guy that we're talking about that had flat refused to take the stuff off the mastering bus when I'd asked him to do that, or well, I'd asked the label, whether the label passed that information on or not, I don't know. But anyway, so I said to the label, I said, I'm sure you've definitely made a mistake here. That's my version that's online. I said, and you've credited this guy. I said, well, either take that version down. Anyway, they said, oh no, we've checked the file and it's definitely the new one. So So I went back to it and I analysed it again. I checked the luffs. It's identical to my master. You could see where I'd cut off the mid side in the low frequencies, and you could see, you know, everything about it. And plus, it had that little ancillary moment that I always insert on my masters. And so I was like, no, I'm absolutely 100%. I know for a fact that was my master. There's no doubt about that, you know. And lo and behold, it was present on this version that they said was his. And I'm like, well, there's too many coincidences here. This is just, there's no way that that's his. I can see 100%, and I'm not just saying, you know, this loosely. This is 100% my master. And yet they were absolutely adamant that that version was the one that he'd sent in that morning, and that he'd mastered, right? And so he comes back and says, oh, I don't understand your point. This is a free album and all of that. Oh, there's no money involved and we don't need this drama. Nobody tried to credit a third party for the work carried out at Lek Productions. Well, I'm sorry, but that is exactly my point. Because you're saying that nobody's tried to credit a third party. Well, yes, you did. You credited a third party with my work. So, yes, that is my point. So I messaged back and I said, look, I've put a lot of work in on this, and it's not fair for someone else taking credit for all the hard work I've done. I agreed to do this for free, and I'm not asking for money, but I would like to point out that my services are usually £50 a track. Now that is really reasonable for a hand master. Anyway, that would amount to £600 because there was 12 tracks that I'd actually done. So I said to him, I said, look, at least do the right thing and give credit where it's due. You know, I can see it's my master. Come on, just play the game, guys. You know. So he come back and he sent me this image, this one here, claiming that the track that was on Bandcamp was the original track. Now you can see that that's brick walled. You can see here clearly this is brick walled. And then he's put his original track before I mastered it. Now hang on a minute, the one available on Bandcamp looks identical to the one he sent in the first time before I'd mastered it. So if he'd mastered it, then the one on Bandcamp should look different to the first one, which is the one on the right. So the two files at the top should look different. And as you can see, the mastered track that I've done at the bottom has all of the dynamics brought back in. This is the one that was uploaded to Bandcamp, as you can see here from the one I downloaded from Bandcamp. You can see exactly that these two tracks are identical. The one that's available on Bandcamp and the original one he sent the first time. So it's definitely not his track that was way too loud that's on there. And I'm like, oh, come on. You know, that's... Now I know it's absolutely clear by this point that they're not wanting to keep to the agreement we had. And they want to put this credit over to this guy that's brickwalled the track, and even though it was my master that was sitting on there, they wanted to give him the credit. So I said to him, look, you know, I thought, you know, I'm going to call you out now. So I said, look, right, that's enough. It's, you know, play the game properly. I said, look, if you're going to start playing games like that, you can either correct the mistakes, replace all the mastered tracks with the originals, or pay the full amount, which would have been £600 UK. Anyway, and I also went on to say that I'm not comfortable with the track being used on that compilation either, the track that I'd written. I said, no, I'm not. I don't want it on there. I want away from this. I don't want to ever work with these guys again, which is why I'm making this video. I couldn't care less about them. Anyway, so he went on to go with a second option, which was to replace all of the tracks. Now, come on, you've got a perfectly mastered album here, right? And he's gone for the other option to replace all of these tracks with the originals, and apparently has had to go around all of the artists asking them if they can send them in again. And I'm like, Oh my word, come on. So he's gone with that option. And then he told me, after he'd gone with that option, he told me that it was my choice. Well, hang on a minute, I gave you the choices? No? Did you not notice that I'd sort of given you 3 options there? No, obviously not. So he thought he'll just read the middle one, because he obviously doesn't want to give credit where it's due, and then told me that it was my choice. I don't know. Really don't. Anyway, but there were a couple of other little sleight of hands that were going on as well. It was shady business. It was clear once it was after this. Once it was online, it was pretty clear how they were working this, and these little sleight of hands that are giveaway things. Like initially, it was supposed to be a free album, and we all said, we agree it's free. But what they'd done, they'd said free, but name your price or pay pay what you want. So you get this pop-up box, and it says, well, how much do you want to pay? Name your price. What do you want? What do you think it's worth? How much do you want to pay? And obviously, if this is an obituary tribute, then people will go, I'll put some money in. I'll put some money in, not realising that the only people that are pocketing this are the people that basically said, I'm going to make an album. They haven't done all the mastering. They haven't done all the tracks. They haven't done any of the work. So they would be only people that profited off that. And usually, in my experience, when you put name your price, particularly on an album in this vein, people usually pay a bit extra. I'll give you 20. There goes $20. There's £10 for it. I'm happy to pay that. It's worth it. It's worth it. He was a good guy. So they've used his death to sort of gain anyway. So I said, look, I called him out on it. I said, why have you got that on there? Oh, I hadn't noticed. Right. Okay. Well. Okay. Fair enough. I'll take that. It's probably a mistake, But then there was other things, other little sleight of hands that were going on. Like they'd defaulted their track to be they'd just chucked these files on alphabetically. So basically, they took the chunk of files all in the alphabetical order and gone lump like that. So that's all the work they've done. Chucked it on the server, so they've all stayed all alphabetical. But their artist name is just a bit below halfway in the alphabet, and so their track sort of came sort of 2/3 of the way down the album was their track, and they defaulted their track to play first. So their track, it defaults to their track. Now, this is the upshot of what would happen. So if you have got a playlist here, and it cuts in there, the first track it plays is this one. When you're streaming, it only plays from that point down, and then it will move on to either another album or whatever. So these tracks that are above that, if you're just switching it on to stream, most people, if they've got Bandcamp on, they'll just fire an album on, they'll press play, they won't look at it, and they'll go and do other stuff, tidy the house, whatever you're doing, and have that music on in the background. And, so what happens is it'll only stream from there downwards. So all of these artists that were above them are not going to get played when it's streamed, unless you actually go in and say, click, I want to play that, I want to play that particular, I want to play it from the start. Most people won't sort of see that. They'll just play an album and then not realise. But yeah, so they defaulted there, and I can see why they did it, because what would happen is their track would get the maximum number of plays, more plays than anything else, because even if you just switch it on and switch it back off again, it's initiated their track, so they're always going to get the biggest number of plays of their track. So it's just so many little sleight of hands, and I thought, do you know what? The guy that died, he was so selfless, he wouldn't even think about it. He'd put his stuff last, he'd put you first, that's how he was. And I thought, you're the complete opposite of that. I want absolutely nothing to do with this. And that's why I said, enough. take all my stuff off. I don't want anything to do with you. I want my track deleted from that album, you know. And I mean, I wrote a track specifically. It's even actually samples the guy that died. You know, he did a very few videos where he was talking, but I just had to find something. To put him in there. And anyway, so that's how it is. So I don't know what to say here. I don't know how I'd do it differently in future. You know, I mean, being caught up on a thing like this when you're doing something completely for free of charge, I really don't know how you could avoid this situation. You know, it's a bad situation to be in, because when he's gone round to these other artists, oh, you need to send me your track in again, like he hasn't got them in his hard drive all of a sudden. You know, oh, you need to send in these tracks again, we haven't got them. Really? Well, that's strange, they were all on Google Drive a minute ago. You know, so the reason he's gone round all these artists is because he's probably, I'm not saying for certain, but probably bad-mouthing me. But anyway, I don't want to call anybody out here, and I certainly don't want to say anything against anybody. You know, I've mentioned that some of the masters weren't done the way that I would do them as a professional master and engineer. I'm not calling anybody out. Everybody's got their own ways, and there's no digs intended anywhere. Absolutely not. I'm not mentioning any names about this. I mean, people who know me, people in the community will probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and it would surprise me if they didn't. But again, for legal reasons, I'm not putting any names out there. If you know, you can comment all you want, but I'm not saying anything. That's how it is. So that's how it is now. So a week and a half wasted doing what I thought was the right thing. You know, you try and do something good for somebody and they just throw it back in your face. You know, so it's a sad world. You know, but there we go. That's. Sorry I couldn't sort of offer a sort of nice happy ending to this, but I'll smile for you anyway. Anyway, there you go. Well, thanks for watching until the end at least, and not get bored with all the shenanigans, but thanks again.